Get ready for a low COLA for Social Security in 2025. Pablo does not want to hear that, does he? Look at him. He's like, nope, have your meth this morning? But he's not stoned. Normally stoned. No, does meth make you? I know heroin makes you like, ugh. Cocaine makes you fired up. What does meth do? I have no clue. What does meth do for us, Pablo? Does it make you chill, or does it make you fired up? So Finney's definitely my cocaine dog. Pablo's definitely my heroin dog. Because Finney's always running around like a freaking chicken with his head cut off. Pablo's like, just pass the ganj, dude. Pass the devil's lettuce. Oh, yeah. All right, so check this out. The Senior Citizens League, who I'm not a huge fan of, but when I say that, I don't hate them or anything. They play on the emotional fear, and the media loves fear. It's always dog bites man. All right, the media preys on that. And so they come out here today and they think there's going to be a 1.75% COLA for 2025. And they're based that on the CPI-W. Now, remember, the CPI-W is only, 27 to 30% of the population as a whole. There's no reason we should be using CPI-W when it comes to Social Security COLA. We shouldn't do that, but we do. It's not that far removed from CPI-U or CPI-E. CPI-E is kind of what people think we should use for elderly people, and I actually completely agree with that. The interesting thing about CPI-E is that while healthcare is double the perspective of a consumer price index, so basically for normal CPI-U, which covers like 90% of employees out there, healthcare runs about 8% or so of CPI. All right, and the CPI-E, healthcare is double that. All right, just keep that in mind. So that makes sense because the older you get, the more healthcare you consume. Just as a fact, CPI-E stands for elderly. The interesting thing, though, is that housing is almost 50% of CPI-E, which doesn't make any sense given that the vast majority of homeowners, of retirees, own their homes. And I'm going to do another video just proving that from the Fed research that my man, what's that dude's name? Lynn just sent me. Lynn sent me earlier this morning. So I'm going to show you that. Again, I've done that in my own book, Relax and Retire. So why would home be almost 50% of CPI-E when the vast majority of homeowners own their homes outright? That means they don't rent, and there's no owner's equivalent rent that they have to contend with, and yet that is a significant portion of the housing cost that all CPI uses, and CPI-E, which is geared towards the elderly, uses more. It doesn't make any sense, but he doesn't make. So anyway, CPI-W is just, of the three, CPI-W is the least representative of the nation as a whole, and certainly of retirees. But anyway, so you can see here, let me make this a little bit bigger. Probably, you can't make up your mind. You want to play a Finney? You want to hang out with me? What are we doing here, baby? Okay. So CPI-W came in at 2.9% in January. That's higher than inflation trends indicated last month on December. Based on this trend, the Senior Citizens League is adjusting its long-term forecast for COLA in 2025 to 1.75. According to the Senior Citizens League, 73% will say their household costs rose by more than 2% in 2023, and 38% worry that their 2024 COLA will fall short of inflation this year. Well, the problem is that we're just measuring inflation incorrectly. As I've said in my book, I've said a million times on Sunday, we're not hyperinflation. That's just stupid. We're not. But we know for a fact the cost of food is growing significantly more than a lot of other costs have. And most people eat food. I know it's shocking. That's just a fact. And the cost of food have grown remarkably, without question. Now, we're seeing things go down. The price of eggs, the price of cars are going down. I don't know about apparel. And this is a T-shirt I probably had when I was in the Army. No, we didn't have white T-shirts in the Army. So we weren't in the Air Force or the Navy. We actually had OD green T-shirts. I think ours are brown. I can't remember. Either way, they weren't white because we were actually doing stuff for a living, unlike those Air Force and Navy guys with the white T-shirts and their fancy uniforms. We didn't have that. But anyway, when's the last time I freaking changed this? Had this. This is. I don't know. I've had this shirt for years because I haven't liked that. I haven't washed it for many years either. Hear that, Penelope? Hear that? Penelope's like, maybe you should wash your clothes and your wife will get frisky. Nothing to do with my clothes. Nothing to do with the men. I tell you, man. That wife. All I need is some friskiness, so I get it from Pablo instead. How does our estimate compare with others? The Congressional Budget Office, CBO, recently released their annual budget and economic outlook for 2024 to 2034. They say we're going to see, look for key assumptions. The column for 2024, the estimate is 2.5% for COLAs for 2024. But remember, what they do for inflation for Social Security is they use a Q3. So they use July, August, September is what they use for COLAs. All right. So if remember, that's what happened. All the controversy, there's still this day ticks me off about AARP and all these guys. So all the controversy was if you were born in 1960, you could lose a significant Social Security benefit because of the way the Social Security cost of living adjustments were calculated. And that was true until the Social Security Administrator talked in July of 2000. I don't want to get in the whole thing right now, but we knew that by the end of basically by the end of June, there was no more deflation. Inflation was kicking back in. We knew that. And yet, so we had this commissioner of the Social Security Administration give a talk, actually on July 7th in 2020, saying we could see a significant decline for people born in 1960. But we had already seen the data coming out for Q3 COLAs. And we already knew that wasn't going to happen. And then, so the Q3 COLAs came out in 2020, and we knew that there wasn't going to be any reduction in Social Security benefits for people born in 1960. But even ARP still wrote a story on that like November, December, after the issue was already done. I said, man, you're just doing this for clickbait. I don't know if the Senior Citizens League did that or not. I was so mad. I was like, man, what are you guys doing, man? Now you're just creating negativity out there. Don't put negativity in the ether that doesn't need to be there, man. There's already enough negativity in the world, man. Good night. Anyway, so the point being is we have July, August, September. That's Q3. That's what Social Security COLAs are based on, that one quarter, which is kind of weird, but it is what it is. Now, do you think inflation is going to be significantly higher come Q3 than it is now? I don't think so. I think inflation is going to go down. I absolutely think so. Now, I mean, again, the way they measure inflation, I think will go down. Because you can see transportation is a significant cost of inflation. Transportation, the cost of vehicles are going down. That's just a fact. The inventories are huge. These are just a fact. The cost of your gasoline to fill up the car, the cost of electricity is going down. These are just facts. Relative to the world last year, man. I'm not saying they're not going up, but in terms of the inflation that we had last year, the increasing is a deceleration. Deceleration doesn't mean decreasing, just means the acceleration is dropping. I hope that makes sense. So we're still going up, but just not as fast as what we were last year. I think that's going to continue on for sure. And hopefully you got a nice mild summertime this year to keep the cost of your electricity down and whatnot too. But remember, housing is a big one, all right? Most people aren't selling. That's just a fact. You know, the interest rates have leveled off. That's a fact. All right, so housing is a big one. On top of that, transportation is number 2. All right, ouch, that hurt. Look at these nails. You gotta get like a nail. Look at that. Jeez. Row, row. Like a cat. He could scratch me to death if he wanted to. Transportation is the number 2 thing of CPI. What's transportation? The price of cars going up or down. The price of gasoline going up or down. The price of electricity going up or down. All right, so natural gas has gone to as low in like 35 years, the price of natural gas, which means the price to heat or feed your home electricity is down too, most likely. So that's all good, man. This is all good stuff. So I would say about a 2% COLA for 2025 would make sense for sure. But that's a compounding COLA. That's 2% off what it was last year, which is a compounding off what it was the year before. It's not simple. It's not like delayed earnings credits, which are simple. You get 8% a year. Simple 8%. COLAs are compounded year over year. They add to what it was last year. Same as inflation, by the way. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But let me hear what you think was going to be inflation. They're hyper, or what they'll say, they're not measuring true inflation. Well, give me something to measure on. What is it? What's true inflation? Give me something. So if the CPI is no good, and I've challenged CPI because of owner's equivalent rent and the high cost of transportation for people who don't buy and sell a new or used vehicle every year, tell me what would you have? What would you replace it with? All right? If you want to say a basket of goods, i.e. food, that's fine. You can say, look, what did the price of corn, a bushel of corn cost in 1900 compared to now? That's fine. But then you have to measure it relative to income. How much did your income buy of corn from 1900 to today? You see what I'm saying? That's why it's so freaking dumb how these people flip out. They're like, I was just reading today, some guy says Social Security is stagnant, or there's no cost of living adjustment for retirees. That's just not true. There is a cost of living adjustment. So he came back and said, well, COLA's and high CPI, it doesn't keep up with inflation. I said, it does keep up with inflation. Well, not real inflation. I said, well, what is real inflation? Yeah, I've heard back, but I know he's going to say, 20%. I said, based on what? Based on what, man? I mean, all right, love your thoughts. God bless.